A poor
Sir, your
waitress calls a
son!
mafia
He's
boss
on the
and says
street!
his son
I
is
think he's
unconscious on the
unconscious!
street.
Please, you have to come
Hi,
quick!
my beautiful family. I speak to you today with a heart full of love, built also with truth. Our channel is built on your strength, your love, and your support. Every story I write is written with tears, with passion, and with prayer for each one of you. But my family, I see the channel going down because many forget to like, many forget to comment. It hurts me because it feels like my hard work is left unseen. I ask you today, not just as a creator, but as your brother who truly loves you. Please, whenever you watch, give your love back. A simple like, a simple comment keeps this family alive, keeps our light shining, and gives me the power to bring you more and more beautiful stories. May God bless every woman in this family with honor, with dignity, and with unshakable strength. May every man be blessed with wisdom and respect. May our children rise higher than mountains, and may every home be filled with endless love and peace. Amen. If your heart is true, write present. If your love is real, write in the comment where you're watching from. What would you do if the drunk guy harassing you at work turned out to be the mafia boss's son? And what if the moment you tried to do the right thing, your entire life spiraled into chaos? That's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just a waitress, working another miserable late shift in a diner that smelled like burnt grease and old coffee. My paycheck barely covered rent, and the tips decided whether I could eat properly that week. Most nights I prayed for quiet customers. Instead, that night, I got them. A pack of young guys swaggered in like they owned the place. Loud voices, too much cologne, pockets full of cash. The kind of customers who don't look at you, they look through you. And at the center of it all, one drunk man who wanted the whole world to know he was untouchable. He mopped my uniform, waved his bills in my face, and laughed when I tried to brush him off. Every insult was followed by a sloppy grin, like I should be grateful for his attention. I hated him on sight. But here's the twist. He wasn't just another spoiled rich kid. He was Marco, the son of that family. The family everyone in town whispered about, but never mentioned by name. The Mafia. The kind of people who didn't just hold grudges, they buried them. By the time his friends ditched him, Marco was too drunk to walk. I watched him stumble into the night, swaying like a puppet with good strings, before collapsing face first on the pavement. For a second, I froze. My mind raced. Call an ambulance? Pretend I hadn't seen a thing? Just lock the door and go home? But then I did something reckless. Something that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. I called his father. And here's where you'd expect gratitude, right? Maybe even a reward for saving his son. That's not how this story goes. My kindness wasn't met with thanks, it was met with suspicion, with a cold, calculated gaze that seemed to strip the skin of my bones. From the moment that call connected, my life stopped belonging to me, because when you stumble into the mafia's world, you don't just walk away. You'll see how one phone call, one moment of mercy turned into betrayal, humiliation, and ultimately revenge. Not petty, not impulsive. No, the kind of revenge that takes patience, precision, the kind that leaves scars deeper than any bullet ever could. And trust me, you won't see it coming. Hey, if you love stories where revenge doesn't just knock on the door, it breaks it down and redecorates the whole house, make sure you hit that subscribe button. These scripts take hours to craft, and your support means everything. Now, let's dive in. My name's Lena. At the time, I was 24, working the late shift at a diner that looked like it had given up sometime in the 80s. The neon sign buzzed like a dying bee. The linoleum floor was cracked in too many places to count, and the smell of grease never really washed out of your clothes. Still, it was a job. And when you're broke, you don't complain, you survive. Most nights blurred together. A couple truckers, a few night owls, maybe a college kid with an all-nighter ahead of them. Nothing special. But underneath the tired smiles and endless cups of coffee, I carried my own battles. Rent overdue. A mother whose prescriptions cost more than I made in a week. The kind of loneliness that makes you talk to yourself just to fill the silence when you get home. I wasn't living. I was scraping by, and then they walked in. The door slammed open like it was their stage entrance. 4 men, maybe mid-20s, laughing too loud, reeking of expensive liquor and entitlement. Their clothes screamed money. Their swagger said they'd never worked a real job a day in their lives. I knew their type instantly. The kind who saw waitresses as props, not people. At see the center of the group was Marco. Even before I knew his name, I knew he was trouble. His hair was slicked back, his shirt half unbuttoned, like he wanted the whole room to know he thought he was God's gift. His eyes had that glossy, unfocused look, the kind that told me he was way past drunk. I tried to keep it professional. Always keep it professional. Table for 4? I asked, forcing a polite smile. Marco grinned at me, slow and crooked. Table for royalty, sweetheart. He slapped a wad of cash on the counter, bills spilling out like confetti. Don't worry, you'll get your tip if you play nice. His friends roared with laughter. My stomach tightened, but I bit my tongue. In jobs like mine, swallowing your pride was part of the uniform. I led them to a booth, grabbed menus, and tried to move on. But Marco wasn't done. Not by a long shot. When I brought their drinks, he leaned back, eyes raking over me in a way that made my skin crawl. So, Lena, he said, squinting at my name tag, is this what you dreamed about when you were a kid? Singing burgers for people like me? His friends snickered, elbowing each other. I wanted to snap back, tell him where he could shove his greasy smile. But I needed the tip. I needed every cent. So I did what I always did. I smiled through it. Would you like extra fries with that? My voice sounded steady, but inside I burned. Marco smirked, waving $100 bill like it was nothing. You can keep the change. If you say thank you, sir, like you mean it. The booth erupted with laughter again. My face flushed hot, but I said it. I said the words because in that moment, survival mattered more than dignity. And that's the thing about people like Marco, they can smell when you're trapped. They thrive on it. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. You're lucky I'm in a good mood tonight. Otherwise, I'd make this place a nightmare for you. His breath reeked of whiskey. His smile was all sharp edges. I pulled back, nodding like I hadn't heard the threat. But my hands were shaking when I set down the drinks. That night, the diner felt smaller, the buzzing neon harsher. Every second with them dragged like an hour. I counted down the moments until they'd leave, until I could breathe again. But fate wasn't about to let me off easy, because Marco wasn't just another spoiled brat with money to burn. He was Marco De Luca, the son of the most feared man in the city, a Mafia boss whose name never appeared in the paper, but whose shadow stretched across every corner of town, and I had just become his entertainment. Have you ever worked a job where you had to smile through disrespect? How did you handle it? By the time the clock crept past midnight, I was praying those men would finally leave. The diner was nearly empty, just the hum of the fridge, the faint buzz of the neon sign outside, and Marco's laughter echoing through the booth like a bad song on repeat. Then, one by one, his friends decided they'd had enough. I watched them slide out of the booth, pat him on the back, and mutter excuses. Got an early morning, bro. You'll be fine. Man, not one of them looked twice as they staggered out into the night that left Marco alone, slumped in the booth with his glassy eyes and half-slurred insults. I cleared away the mess they'd left, grease-smeared plates, soggy fries, dollar bills tossed like trash. Marco waved his hand at me, trying to catch my attention. Another drink, he mumbled, voice thick with liquor. No more, I said gently, setting down a glass of water instead. You've had enough, he sneered, pushing the glass back. Don't tell me what I've had. You work for me. I didn't answer. I just kept wiping the table, my heart pounding. praying he'd give up. A few minutes later, he finally stood or tried to. His legs buckled, sending him crashing into the edge of the table. I flinched at the sound, but he only laughed. "See, I am fine." He wasn't fine. I followed him with my eyes as he staggered toward the door, swaying side to side. The night air rushed in when he shoved it open, a sharp cold that carried the scent of rain. Then the door swung shut, and silence filled the diner for a moment. I let out a shaky breath of relief. He was gone. My shift was almost over. Maybe finally I could breathe again, but not even a minute later. I heard a heavy thud from outside. I froze, rag in hand. My gut twisted, pushing open the door. I stepped into the night. There he was, Marco DeLuca, face down on the pavement, unmoving. My stomach dropped. I rushed closer, kneeling beside him. His chest was still rising, shallow but steady. His cheek was scraped against the asphalt, blood mixing with the rain that had just begun to fall. He reeked of whiskey, his breaths uneven. I stood there in the glow of the flickering diner sign, torn in half. I could walk away, pretend I never saw him. God knows he'd end it after the way he treated me. Or I could call an ambulance. That would be the normal thing, the safe thing. But then what? Paramedics, police, questions. And sooner or later, the DeLuca family asking why I let their golden boy get carted off like a common drunk. And then there was the third option, the one that made my blood run cold just thinking about it. Everyone in town whispered that if you ever crossed paths with the DeLucas, there was one number you could call. A number passed quietly from lip to lip, like a prayer or a curse. His father's. I stared down at Marco, rain dripping from my hair, heart thudding in my chest. Call 911, walk away, or risk calling the boss himself. I wish I could tell you I made the smart choice, that I looked out for myself, not for the man who had sneered in my face all night. But I didn't. I pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed the number I wasn't even sure was real. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, low, steady, and colder than steel. "Who is this?" For a second, I couldn't breathe. "My name's Lena," I stammered. "I work at the diner on Maple." "Your son?" "Marco. He's outside. He's unconscious." I didn't know who else to silence. A silence so heavy it made the rain sound like thunder. Finally, the voice spoke again. "Stay where you are." The line went dead. And oh, thank you. No relief, just an order. I stood there in the rain, clutching my phone, staring at Marco's crumpled body. My skin prickled with the weight of what I'd just done. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Each second felt like an hour. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if he died? What if they blamed me? What if calling his father had just signed my death warrant? And then I heard it, the low growl of engines. 2 black cars rolled up, tires hissing against the wet pavement. Doors opened in unison. Men in dark suits stepped out, their eyes sharp, movements precise. They didn't look at me. They looked through me. Finally, the last door opened, and out stepped a man I recognized instantly, though I'd never seen him in person before. Mr. DeLuca, Marco's father. He didn't rush to his son. He didn't kneel or shout or even frown. He just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, expression unreadable, as 2 men lifted Marco off the ground like a rag doll. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, maybe to defend myself, but the words died on my tongue when his eyes landed on me, cold, calculating, the kind of stare that makes you feel like your soul has been laid bare and weighed. And found wanting, he gave a small nod to his men, then turned back to the car, and just like that, they were gone. And oh, thank you. No acknowledgement that I might have saved his son's life, only silence, and in that silence, a truth settled in my chest like a stone. I wasn't out of danger. I had just stepped into it. If you were in Lena's shoes, would you call an ambulance, walk away, or risk calling the boss? Be honest, when the cars pulled up that night, I thought I'd done the right thing. I thought calling his father would mean Marco was safe, and I could go back to wiping counters and pretending none of it ever happened. But the second Mr. DeLuca stepped out of that black car, I realized I'd made a mistake. He didn't look like a man rushing to save his son. He looked like a man conducting business. Calm, precise, untouchable. His suit was pressed. His shoes gleamed, and his face carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much and cared too little. The men around him moved in silence. No hesitation. They lifted Marco like he was nothing more than luggage, his head lolling, his shoes dragging against the pavement. And then DeLuca looked at me. That stare pinned me to the spot, colder than the rain sliding down my back. No anger, no gratitude, just calculation. Good girl, he said quietly. His voice was low, smooth, but it cut like glass. You did the right thing. You'll be remembered for it. Then he turned and left. The words should have been comforting, but in his tone, they sounded like a warning. The next day, I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself it was over. Just another bizarre story to tuck away and never repeat. But a week later, Marco walked back into the diner. Alive, upright, and even worse than before, he didn't come alone. Two of his father's men flanked him, standing near the door like shadows. Marco leaned against the counter, sunglasses still on despite the dim lights, a smug grin stretching across his face. Well, my guardian angel, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Miss Lena, did you miss me? I froze, tray in hand. Do you want a table? I asked flatly. He laughed, loud enough to make the handful of customers turn. Look at her, all business. You saved my life, sweetheart. You and me, we're connected now. His bodyguards didn't laugh. They didn't move. They just watched. I tried to keep my voice steady. Glad you're okay. Do you want coffee? Marco leaned closer, lowering his voice. You don't get it, do you? When you call my father, you don't just go back to your little life. You're in the family now. I forced a weak smile, though my stomach churned. That's not how it works. But he shook his head, clicking his tongue. No, Lena, that's exactly how it works. Later that night, as I closed the diner, the door swung open one last time. I expected Marco again, but it wasn't him. It was his father. Mr. DeLuca stepped inside, alone this time. The diner seemed smaller with him in it, the air heavier. He slid into a booth like he had all the time in the world. I wiped my hands on my apron and forced myself to approach. Coffee? I asked. My voice sounded thin. He nodded once. I poured. For a long while, he said nothing. Just stirred the sugar, slow and deliberate. Finally, he looked up. You made a choice, he said softly. When you called me, you stepped into my world. I swallowed hard. I was trying to help. His lips curved, not quite a smile, not quite a threat. And help is rare, which is why it's never forgotten. You'll find, Miss Lena, that loyalty has consequences. I gripped the edge of the table. I don't want anything from you. His eyes sharpened. It's not about what you want. It's about what you've already given. You showed kindness to my son. And in my world, kindness is weakness. Weakness is... And the words settled over me like chains. He stood, smoothing his suit. Consider yourself under my protection now. He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, and my expectations. Then he left. I locked the diner door with shaking hands. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. That calm certainty. The way he spoke as if my life was no longer my own. I thought saving Marco meant I had done a good deed. Instead, I had traded freedom for chains I couldn't see but could already feel tightening. Because Mr. DeLuca's thank you wasn't gratitude. It was a curse. Imagine doing the right thing, only for it to trap you in someone else's mess. What would you do? It started small, subtle, the kind of things you could almost write off as bad luck. But when you're in the DeLuca family's orbit, But luck isn't a coincidence, it's a leash. Marco showed up at the diner more often after that night. Not to eat, not even to see me really. He came to own the space. He'd lean against the counter, smirking, ordering things he never touched. His friends followed, laughing too loudly, treating the place like their private playground. And every time the other customers noticed, regulars I'd known for years began drifting away. They didn't want to sit near him. They didn't want the risk. Neither did my coworkers dot at first. They joked, Lena's got a rich admirer, but the laughter faded quick. The whispers started. Then came the distance. Dishes left for me to wash. Tables no one else wanted to cover. Shifts swapped without asking. Soon, I realized I was alone in a room full of people. The breaking point came one Thursday night. Marco strolled in, drunk again, sunglasses still on. He tossed $100 bill on the counter and leaned close. You should smile more, Lena. You're prettier when you smile. I kept my tone flat. You want something to eat? He tilted his head, mocking. Don't play cold with me. You think you're better than me. My father says you're family now. Family doesn't frown. The silence around us was deafening. My coworkers kept their heads down, pretending not to hear. I wanted one of them, any of them, to step in, but nobody did, because being near me was dangerous now. When I clocked out, Marco was waiting outside. He leaned against a car I didn't recognize, spinning his keys. His smile was too wide, too knowing. Need a ride home? He asked. I shook my head. I'll walk. Suit yourself. Just remember, Lena, when I say jump, you don't get to ask how high. You just do it. That's how this works. That night, I walked faster than I ever had in my life. My hands shook the whole way home. It didn't stop there. One morning, I woke to find a sleek black car idling across the street. Different men, always in rotation. Sometimes they didn't even hide it. They'd sit there with the engine running, sunglasses up, watching my door. It was a message. We see you. Your hours. I tried applying to other jobs. Anywhere. Grocery store, bookshop, even cleaning offices. But every interview ended the same way. Smiles turned cold. Calls never came back. One manager even said it outright. Sorry, Lena, we can't afford. Complications. That was me now. The girl who made one phone call and ended up branded property of a crime family. You know what it feels like to vanish in plain sight. To walk into your workplace, your neighborhood, and see people look away not because they don't know you, but because they do. That's where I was. Invisible but watched, ignored but controlled. And here's the cruel part. I thought maybe Marco would get bored, that he'd move on. But the opposite happened. My refusal to play along made him press harder. He cornered me one night in the alley behind the diner, breath heavy with alcohol. You're ungrateful. You know that? Do you have any idea what happens to girls who don't show respect? I met his stare, even though my knees shook. Do you have any idea what happens to men who can't hold their liquor? For a second, his smirk faltered. Then he laughed, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old friends. You've got fire. I like that. My father thinks you're weak. I don't. Not yet. Then he left me in the dark, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I went home that night and stared at my reflection. My hair was limp, my eyes hollow. The girl staring back at me wasn't the same one who'd picked up extra shifts to cover her mom's medical bills, who scraped together tips to keep the lights on. That girl was gone. In her place was someone cornered, someone caged, someone who couldn't keep taking hits without breaking. And that's when the shift happened. Because here's the thing about people like Marco. They think fear keeps you small. They think intimidation breaks you down until you're nothing. But sometimes fear sharpens you. Sometimes it makes you notice things. Like how Marco bragged too much when he drank. How he ran his mouth about deals his father would never want public. How he left his phone unlocked on the counter, flashing texts with names and numbers I wasn't supposed to see. I realized something. Marco wasn't just a bully. He was sloppy, careless, reckless in a way that made him dangerous not just to me, but to his own family. And the more I noticed, the more one thought kept circling in my mind. They think I belong to them. But what if I turned that against them? It was just a seed at first, a whisper in the back of my head. But it grew. Every time Marco smirked, every time a coworker looked away, every time I saw that black car outside my apartment, something inside me hardened. I stopped thinking of myself as their victim. I started thinking of myself as their liability, because Marco didn't know it. But he'd handed me pieces of a puzzle, and once I put them together, I'd have something far more powerful than fear. I'd have leverage, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. What's worse, being ignored or being controlled? Drop your thoughts below. The DeLuca family thought I was done. A waitress too poor to quit, too scared to fight, too ordinary to matter. That's what made me dangerous. I didn't swing back right away. I didn't storm their world with fire and fury. No, if I'd done that, I'd already be buried. Instead, I did what waitresses are trained to do. Listen, every smirk Marco dropped at the counter, every phone call he thought was private, every offhand brag, it all became mine. A mental ledger of debts and secrets. Funny how men like him never notice the help. We're invisible until we're not. Marco strutted into the diner one night, drunk as ever, slapping bills down like breadcrumbs. His voice carried, careless. Dad's got the shipment coming Tuesday. Big one. Real money this time. I poured his coffee, steady hands, neutral face. But inside, I was memorizing every word. That's how it went for weeks. I served him eggs and whiskey, and he served me intel he didn't even know he was giving. But here's the cruel twist about playing quiet. You start to think maybe you're invisible to everyone. And that's when betrayal hits the hardest. It was Claire, my only friend at the diner. The one who stayed behind after shifts, helping me clean, whispering jokes when things got too heavy. She knew about the cars outside my apartment, the shadows that followed me. She knew how scared I was so when the DeLuca suddenly showed up at my door, repeating things I'd only ever said to Claire. I felt the floor drop out beneath me. The boss sat in my kitchen like he owned it. Black suit, ringed hands folded neatly on my table. Marco leaned in the doorway, grinning like a cat who'd cornered a mouse. You've been listening, Lena? The boss said, voice calm, sharp. Too much, maybe. My son tells me you've got a sharp memory. That true? My throat dried up. I forced a shrug. I serve coffee. I don't keep score. He smiled thinly. Good. Because people who keep score around here usually don't last. That smile wasn't a warning. It was a death sentence waiting for an excuse. And when they finally left, Claire wouldn't meet my eyes the next morning. That's how I knew. The betrayal cut deeper than Marco's cruelty ever could. He was predictable, a spoiled bully drunk on power. But Claire, she was supposed to be safe. That's when something inside me hardened. If kindness could be twisted against me, then kindness was over. My revenge wouldn't just be survival anymore. It would be payback. So I played along. I smiled when Marco came in. I let Claire think I didn't know. I stayed small, invisible. But every night, I pieced together the scraps I'd collected. Shipments, drop points, numbers scribbled on napkins when Marco thought no one was watching. Even the names he shouldn't have been bragging about. It was all there, waiting for the right moment. And with every detail I gathered, my fear began to rot into something sharper, something colder, resolve. The DeLucas thought they owned me. They thought betrayal had broken me down to dust. But all they'd really done was teach me the one lesson no one ever taught them. Never underestimate the quiet ones, because the quiet ones, they're the ones planning. Would you fight back against a family like this? Or cut your losses and run? The thing about being underestimated, it gives you space to move. Marco and his father thought I was just a scared waitress, trapped under their shadow. They didn't see me memorizing every date, every name, every careless brag Marco let slip over late-night coffee, and I wasn't about to waste the dot. IT started small. I slipped a phone into my apron pocket and recorded Marco's drunken rants. He talked too much about shipments, about politicians in his father's pocket, even about a warehouse that nobody would ever touch. He was sloppy, and sloppiness leaves footprints. I packaged what I had gathered and sent it, anonymously, to people who knew exactly how to use it, law enforcement that had been circling the DeLucas for years. But I didn't stop there. I wanted it to hurt. One night, Marco stumbled in again, flashing bills and leaning too close. He smirked at me, the same way he always did. But I smiled back, because I knew what was coming. Why the next morning? The papers were filled with headlines about raids, warehouses, arrests, accounts frozen. The DeLucas weren't untouchable anymore. Marco stormed into the diner, red-faced, veins bulging. "You," he hissed, slamming his fist on the counter. "You know something. Don't you dare lie to me." I just tilted my head, wiping down the counter like his anger was nothing more than spilled coffee. "Maybe you should drink less, Marco," I said evenly. "You talk too much." That silence after. It was the first time I saw fear flicker in his eyes. The boss wasn't as easy to rattle. He didn't scream. He didn't curse. He sent men. Shadows lurking outside my building. Engines idling down the block. But the more they pushed, the more desperate they looked. And the more desperate they looked, the more power I felt returning to me. Because the truth was simple. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was pulling strings. It all built to one final night. I watched from the diner window as Marco staggered to his car, phone pressed to his ear, shouting about fixing this mess. I knew the call was tapped. I knew his words would seal it. And as the blue and red lights flared down the street, cutting through the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the loudest one in the room, it's the one who's been listening the whole time. And I had listened long enough. If you had the chance to quietly dismantle someone who thought they owned you, would you take it? Empires don't collapse in one loud crash. They crumble in cracks, hairline fractures, spreading until the whole thing gives way. That's exactly what happened to the DeLucas. The first crack was Marco himself. He wasn't built for pressure. When the raid started, when their accounts were frozen, when his father's men started disappearing one by one, Marco did what Marco always did. He panicked. He lashed out in the diner, shouting at strangers, blaming everyone but himself. His arrogance, the same arrogance that once made him untouchable, became the very reason no one wanted to stand beside him. Even his father's men started looking away. And when the people paid to protect you start pretending not to hear your orders, that's when you know the end has begun. The boss, though he stayed composed, at least on the surface. He came in once more, sat in his usual booth, and stirred his coffee with that same slow precision. But his silence wasn't strength anymore. It was defeat wearing a mask. He glanced at me, eyes dark and heavy. "You think you've won, don't you?" he asked. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is the sharpest blade. Meanwhile, something strange started happening around me. For months, people avoided me like I was contagious. Co-workers whispered. Neighbors looked away. Even friends pretended not to know me. But now, that shifted. The cops who once brushed me off started listening when I spoke. Customers who used to treat me like furniture began tipping extra, asking how I was holding up. Even the same co-workers who distanced themselves started inching back, offering awkward smiles and apologies they didn't quite have the courage to say out loud. I hadn't asked for respect. But there it was, arriving quietly, like morning light sneaking under a door. One night, I locked up the diner and walked past the corner where Marco used to lean against his car, barking into his phone. It was empty now. Just cracked pavement and silence. and for the first time in a long time, I felt safe, not powerful in the way the Delucas thought power worked: guns, money, fear. My power was quieter, subtle, the kind you can carry without it weighing you down. Dignity. Marco's downfall came fast after that. His reckless mouth, the same one that once filled the diner with arrogance, ended up testifying against him in court, whether he meant to or not. The boss. He faded into the background. No fiery last stand. No grand show of control. Just an aging man watching the empire he built slip through his fingers. And me. I kept wiping down counters, pouring coffee, and clocking in my shifts. But now, when people looked at me, they didn't see the poor waitress. They saw the one who survived the Delucas. The one who didn't bend, even when it looked like she'd break. I never wanted revenge in the Hollywood sense: explosions, guns, screaming matches in the night. What I wanted was simpler, my life back, and in the end, I got it. Doing the right thing doesn't always pay off right away. Sometimes it feels like the world punishes you for even trying. But when patience meets strategy, that's where true revenge lives. Quiet, lasting, and undeniable. Doing the right thing doesn't always pay off right away, but when patience meets strategy, that's where true revenge lives. So that's how it ended. A waitress dismissed, underestimated, nearly broken, turned the tables on men who thought they owned the city. Lena didn't win by shouting the loudest or striking first. She won by waiting, by watching, by refusing to let their cruelty define her. Her revenge wasn't about becoming ruthless. It was about reclaiming something far rarer, her dignity. The kind of power no one can take once you decide it belongs to you. Funny, isn't it? Marco and his father measured strength in guns and money. But in the end, what undid them wasn't a bullet. It was patience, wit, and a woman they thought they could silence with fear. Would you call that poetic justice? I would. And if you enjoyed walking through this story of grit, betrayal, and quiet revenge, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a twist that feels and dot. IT takes hours of writing and editing to bring stories like this to life. And your support is what keeps them coming, because at the end of the day, revenge may be sweet, but telling it well, that's the real victory.